First off, I want to welcome all of you to our June 8th, 2022 regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Chandler Unified School District. We will start with our roll call. Mrs. Nye.
Barb Moxton.
Here.
Jason Thomas.
Here.
Laura Brugner.
Here.
Here.
Thank you, Mrs. Nye. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. That's okay. This evening, I've decided to give a reflection in light of all the events that have occurred over the last few weeks. The U.S. is on pace to surpass its worst year on record for the number of mass shootings. There have been 246 mass shootings through June 5th of this year, including one that especially hit home for educators, parents, and students. A shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, that killed 19 students and 2 teachers. Our hearts go out to all of those who have been impacted by this tragedy and the others in our nation and in our community. CUSD is committed to an ongoing review of our campus safety. Our schools were constructed a little differently, reflective of the standards of their times, which require individualized approaches to keep our students and staff safe. On tonight's board agenda, we will consider the hiring of a director of safety, Mr. Mark Hewish, who comes to us with 20 years of experience in threat assessment with Phoenix Police. We will also focus on modifications to our buildings and security officers. Our Chandler community is not immune to the increase in student suicides that are rocking our nation. We grieve the loss of these young lives and the lifelong impact their deaths have on their families, friends, teachers, and the rest of the community. A number of you have expressed your concerns about the mental health of our students and staff. We hear your concerns, and we are taking appropriate measures. Our Counseling and Social Services Department, led by Brenda Vargas, offers a number of resources, including an event last Thursday that focused on connecting families with support services in the city of Chandler. It's part of an ongoing year-round offering of resources and workshops available to our families. We are committing more than $5 million of expenditures through our schools this year as we continue our commitment to addressing mental health issues in our schools. This also includes ongoing training of staff to identify indicators that a child might be having some troubles. Together, with the community's help, we will do what we can to keep our families safe. I would now like to go on to our routine business. Our first is to approve the minutes of the May 11th, 2022 regular board meeting. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 11th, 2022 regular board meeting as presented.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next is to approve and ratify our payroll and accounts payable vouchers.
Madam President, I make a motion to approve and ratify payroll and accounts payable vouchers.
Second.
All those in favor of approving and ratifying payroll and accounts payable vouchers, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Mr. Narducci, is there any correspondence to share this evening?
Madam President, there is an A at this time.
Thank you. We do have an early action item, and that is a resolution calling for the naming of the tennis courts at Hamilton High School. And Mr. Narducci.
Madam President, members of the board, Phil Gonzalez has dedicated 28 years of teaching and coaching in the Chandler Unified School District. His career included working at Willis Junior High School, Bogle Junior High School, Chandler High School, and the past 24 years at Hamilton High School. Phil's love of coaching tennis has produced many individual and team champions, setting the stage for a tradition of success, which continues in the Hamilton program today. Phil Gonzalez is a recipient of several Coach of the Year awards, regional championships, 6 sectional championships, 7 Final Four state finishes, team state runners-up, and back-to-back state doubles championships. This resume of a program support led to Phil's induction into the Chandler Sports Hall of Fame in the February of 2022, just this year. The Hamilton High School tennis program, under the direction of Coach Gonzalez, has grown to be one of the most respected and successful high school tennis programs in the state. Coach Gonzalez began his early career coaching the girls' tennis teams at Chandler High School in 1984, and has built his CUSD career with the foundations of skill development and competition. Coach Gonzalez brings yet another aspect to the courts, the fun and excitement of the game of tennis. His quiet, unassuming demeanor engages student athletes, and his love for the game of tennis is only surpassed by his dedication to our youth. Coach Gonzalez is fiercely competitive, as are his teams, but it is handled with dignity and integrity. Phil Gonzalez has created a landscape of high levels of engagement, high-quality sportsmanship, and success across the Hamilton High School tennis program. Therefore, in appreciation of Coach Phil Gonzalez and his commitment to tennis in the Chandler Unified School District, we request the governing board name the tennis facility at Hamilton High School in honor of Phil Gonzalez, as presented by the Superintendent, Franklin R. Narducci, on June 8th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Narducci. Could I please get a motion to approve this resolution?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the naming of the tennis courts at Hamilton High School in honor of Phil Gonzalez.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Unfortunately, I'm not a tennis player myself. Does anybody on the board play tennis? No?
I play badminton. Okay.
There's a racket. That's similar.
Yep, so.
I learned it at Hamilton.
But I know that his dedication, Mr. Gonzalez's dedication to our students and to the game of tennis has been extraordinary, and I certainly appreciate us having the honor to be able to name the tennis courts after him at Hamilton Highs. If there's no other comments, all those in favor of approving the resolution, please say aye.
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 Motion carries.
I know, Madam President, Coach Gonzalez is here. Coach, would you mind taking one of the mics here, maybe introducing yourself a little to the group here? And I know you're a man of few words, but this is the time to be able to say those. And
Well-
congratulations to you.
Well, thank you. And good evening, and I want to thank the governing board, Superintendent Narducci. I appreciate this honor to have the courts named after me. I just wanted to share a little story with you. A while back, we had a big storm hit Hamilton High School, and it knocked some of the fencing down. And like a concerned parent, I wanted to make sure the work was done right. So I went and took a look to see if they were doing it right. And I noticed that there was wet cement on one of the posts. And I said to myself, well, I want to be remembered, so how am I going to do this? And I thought, well, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I went and put Coach G was here into the cement. And so I'm humbled and honored that you're going to name these courts after me, so I appreciate it very much. I want to thank my administrators and athletic directors. I want to start off with Dr. Fred Dupree and John Wren, who hired me and believed in me. I want to thank Ken James and Sean Rustad for support. Even had Ken come out and play tennis against the boys a couple of times. So that was kind of cool. And then I want to thank Mike Delatorre and Brett Palmer for continuing that support. And then I want to thank my family and my friends who were there through thick and thin. And then finally, my players, who I didn't consider them as players, I considered them as my extended family. And I appreciate all the hard work they put in when they went in off-season practices during the hot summer months, weight training during the times that they probably wanted to stay in bed on a Saturday. But I appreciate them so much, and I want to thank everyone. Thank you.
Coach Gonzalez, I just came across a clause, though, that says you can't have two things named after yourself on the same facility. Which one would you like to go? Either the concrete or the new signage that's going to come in. So we'll keep them both. Coach, thank you for your commitment to kids, for your commitment to our youth. It's much more important than the commitment to tennis, because through that you can get anything done. I appreciate that. And for doing it that long, you've impacted many lives in a positive way, and so thank you. This is just something small we can do to make sure that that's part of history. We will notify you when the lettering, well, you'll probably see it up because you'll probably be driving by there all the time, and we'll notify you there, and then we'll have something at the site. So, okay, and thanks again for all you've done. Appreciate you.
Next, it's time for our citizen comments, and Mr. Terry Locke is going to summarize our online comments first. Mr. Locke?
Well, thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Narducci. As a courtesy, we provide an opportunity for the public to submit citizen comments electronically on any topic. This cycle, we heard from 4 people who submitted 6 comments. Their feedback fell into the categories of 1, equity and school safety, or 2, dual language immersion. Submitting comments electronically provides our governing board members time to read and prepare prior to the meeting. This format also provides the board an opportunity to ask clarifying questions to the administration. You have the submissions verbatim for your consideration. They're also available on the website for public review.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. And Mr. Locke will also be chairing our citizens' comments by calling up individuals. We have 17 requests for speaking this evening, so we will be limiting them to 2 minutes each. Mr. Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. During public comments, members of the governing board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to state statute, action taken as a result of public comments is limited to directing staff to review the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. The governing board president reserves the right to ensure that speakers present on topics that are within the board's jurisdiction. Everyone is asked to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profanity or threats of harm will not be tolerated. Our first speaker tonight is Kurt Rohrs of Chandler to speak about transparency and improving communications.
Thank you. My name is Kurt Rohrs. I'm a parent in this district, here to speak to you tonight about transparency and improving communications with the public. I believe that USD could and should be the leader in demonstrating best administrative practices for Arizona schools, and I do mean all schools, district, charter, and private. Part of this initiative is improving communications with the taxpaying public that funds the district so they may have a clear understanding of what the district is doing. Here are some examples. There's a concern that teacher professional development trainings, now ongoing during the summer break, which teachers are often paid to attend, contain material on controversial topics. The details are not known since these materials are not disclosed to the public. The best of practice here would be publicly disclose all materials used in professional development trainings that the public is paying for. If the district administration is uncomfortable disclosing the content, then they probably should not be including it in these trainings and certainly should not be representing it to children without the knowledge and consent of their parents. Secondly, a list of books made available to children in the classroom, libraries, and suggested reading lists should be publicly available and easily accessed. The best practice here would be that any materials that contain depiction of explicit sexual activity should not be made available to children either directly or indirectly through internet links. Thirdly, from a recent financial update, it appears that another $5 million in unspent operating funds will be rolled over from the last year's budget to the current one. This is in addition to the $20 million or so already being carried
30
over.
seconds.
Exact amount is not plainly disclosed. Best practice would be to draw only amount needed for the current budget year and the override authorization needed for the next year. Summary, there must be much clearer disclosure from the district administration activities and priorities go a long way towards reestablishing trust of the public. It is incumbent upon the district to explain its actions in such a way that they're clearly understood. Thank you.
Next is of Gilbert to speak about Arizona Students for Mental Health.
Hi. As stated, I'm speaking about mental health topics in Arizona School District, specifically in Chandler. I'm about to be a sophomore at Basha High School, and my main concern is that there is quite a lack of resources when it comes to mental health specifically in schools that the students themselves can access during school hours or after school hours. I believe, as well as some of the other speakers here, that the best way to get the proper resources and proper education needed to help the mental health of students in Chandler is by promoting a student action board, which would be like monthly meetings with students to hear their thoughts, opinions, and ideas about what can best occur to help the students in the Chandler Unified School District, as well as better mental health training for staff, but also that could potentially be accessible to students, specifically through an organization called, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, and they could offer training specifically for staff members, but as well as for the students in Chandler if they are interested in that sort of education
30 seconds.
to better help themselves and those around them. I believe by implementing this action board and this better mental health training that it could not only help the overall well-being of the students, but it would also improve grades and other academics by boosting attendance and making children more motivated to actually come in and do the work.
Thank you.
Next is Sarah Alexander of Chandler to speak about mental health.
Hello, board. My name is Sarah Alexander, and I am a parent of a Chandler student here to speak with you today. And I'm also an educator with 20 plus years of experience in K-12. And I respect your role in the complex process of serving our students. And I know that today can be a start of meaningful change on the topic of mental health. And there are two main reasons why I feel like we are in a perfect position to make these changes. First, you heard her speak about a student action group and mental health first aid program by the National Council for Wellbeing. That program is already approved within the CUSD school district as part of your Title IV plan. So these students, the district already sees value in this program, and these students are simply asking to expand its reach. Second, while funding is often an obstacle to new programming, schools have access to COVID relief funding or ESSER funding to address the pandemic's disruption to learning. CUSD received $47.5 million, and just in that final installment of ESSER 3 funds, there are $30+ million that are available through the next 2 school years. So that allows us to really implement some changes and really let them take root and develop. These funds explicitly require stakeholders to have a say, which the district has done, but that is an ongoing process, and support for mental, social, and emotional health is included. So the current plan only addresses social emotional learning with about $500,000, which is just a mere 1% of that $30 million. So I'm happy to hear today that there's another $5 million going to resources in that area. And I hope that you'll hear the students today and let them take part in that process and in informing the schools of what they need. Your students have a critical need, and we have the financial means to respond, so we would like you to honor their role today and their voices. And
Thank you.
Next is from Chandler to speak about mental health.
Hello, my name is, I'm
I'm here with Arizona Students for Mental Health. I'm 15 years old and about to start my sophomore year at Basha High School. Today I'm here because my mental health is something that I've been struggling with since middle school. It's made school extremely difficult for me. I've never felt there were the necessary resources provided for me, and this doesn't only apply to me, but my friends and family and many students within Chandler struggle with the same things I do. My concern is the lack of mental health resources in CUSD for middle school and high school students. This lack of resources has led to many struggles within students of our district and has even led to an extremely concerning amount of suicides of students attending Chandler schools. What I'm asking for is a student action board in both junior and high schools. This will allow monthly meetings for CUSD students to discuss what we need regarding resources for our mental health provided by our schools. Another thing I'm asking for is mental health training, first aid training for students and staff. We would do this through the company Mental Health First Aid Training from the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. These things will help students struggling with their mental health to improve their attendance, grades, test scores, and overall well-being. In conclusion, the solutions stated will help our students succeed academically, socially, and students will take advantage of the resources provided. This will lead to happier, less stressed students and more students living to graduate and continue a happy life. However, Arizona Students for Mental Health is only a student-led organization, and we need help from the school board in order to achieve our goals.
Next is from Chandler to speak on mental health.
Good evening. My name is with Arizona Students for Mental Health. I am 13 years old, and in the upcoming school year, I will attend San Tan Junior High as an 8th grader. I am here today because I saw firsthand how a lack of mental health resources in school affected my friends and family. I have found that it is very hard to watch my loved ones struggle knowing there isn't much out there to help them. However, this can change. Our community is being divided because many students didn't feel that they had the correct resources to save them. There's a large lack of communication in our district surrounding the topic of mental health as well as suicide, and the word needs to spread so that change can happen. We are asking for students from junior highs and high schools to come together and form a student action board where they would have monthly meetings discussing what they need at school for their mental health. It is important that students talk about it amongst each other because they generally understand each other better than adults do. We are also asking for mental health first aid training for students and staff so that they can recognize the signs before it becomes too late. This will make kids feel safer knowing that they are surrounded by people that can help. If we have these two things in our district, students will be more mentally healthy. They'll perform better academically, meaning better grades, better test scores, better attendance, and healthier students. We deserve more. Now, think about how you felt when you found out that somebody from your district took their own life, and listen to us so it doesn't happen again.
30 seconds.
Thank you for your time.
Next is of Chandler to speak about mental health.
Hi, my name is, and I'm a 15-year-old incoming sophomore at Basha High School. I came here today because I'm deeply concerned with the lack of awareness and support regarding mental health for the youth in the Chandler community. I've had my own fair share of struggles with mental health, and I feel that a lot of the time there's no one I can go to for help. Personally, I believe that there is a negative stigma that is formed around mental health, and that many people think that the side effects of it are not fixable. In reality, they very much are. The outdated style of the current mental health system in CUSD is void of any actual potency in relation to issues surrounding mental health. It's up to me and my fellow students to help change that. One solution to this is to implement a student action board that would incorporate junior high and high school students together to help make decisions about what the community needs. If put into use, the student action board would allow for students to feel more connected in the schooling environment, helping to further academic goals. In turn, this would not just encourage students to attend school more, but encourage them to go excitedly. In addition, we need better training, a new revised form of mental health first aid training provided by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing should be used for both staff and students alike. The revised form of training is critical in building and maintaining a safe relationship between staff and students alike. The current training system is inadequate and ineffective. Overall reform needs to happen. The longer mental health is pushed aside and only thought of as an inconsequential factor of life, the worse it gets for students across Arizona. It should be our collective obligation as a society to put the needs of our students and kids first. Right now, I don't see that happening. These are real issues affecting real people. Academic factors like attendance and test scores are impacted when students are working through mental health issues. Physical health, relationships, and even sustaining life are affected as well. My goal is for real change to happen in my community. With the assistance of Arizona Students for Mental Health, I truly believe that change can happen. Thank you for your time, and please support this important call to action.
Next is Chad Day of Gilbert to speak on mental health.
My name is Chad Day. My son is Pearson Chad Day. He just took his own life 2 weeks ago. I didn't know if I'd be able to get up here and talk to you today, but Rihanna, thank you for reaching out and asking for my assistance. I will be committed to this fight for the rest of my days, and I will be here to help you get what you guys need in your school systems, whether it to be fundraising, whatever it needs. No parent should ever have to go through this. You reached out to me and asked me if we need anything. We don't need anything financially, but what we do need is you to help us with this community, Mr. Narducci. I don't have the answers. I've just been introduced to this. But we have friends and family and very supportive people out there, and we'll be reaching out and we'll be helping our community in every way we can. And we will start with these students who are asking for assistance. It's so brave of them to come in here and have to ask for this. It's a shame that they have to come in here and ask for this. It is up to you to do something about this. If you don't, we will find someone who will, I promise. I love my son, Pearson Chad Day, so much. No parent should ever, ever have to cut their child down.
Mr. Day, thank you for coming this evening, and I am so sorry for your loss.
Next is to speak of mental health, and she is from Chandler.
Good evening. I'm here with Arizona Students for Mental Health. I'm 12 years old and I attend Santan Junior High School. I'll be in 8th grade this year. I'm here today because I've experienced firsthand the inefficient methods schools use to deal with the topics of self-harm, suicide, and anything related to it. The actions taken to help me did not do what they should have. They only made my situation worse. While there are set rules of what needs to happen when students mention these topics, there's so much more the schools can do before they can act on these protocols. Countless students in the district have lost their lives to suicide, yet the district hasn't said much about it. Why haven't we considered how we go about these crises? Even students only mention it when everyone around them decides it's an appropriate time to. While suicide is a serious and hard topic to swallow, that doesn't make it any less important, nor is it an excuse not to mention it. A standardized video about suicide and how to prevent it once a year is not enough for our students. What we're asking for as an organization is a student action board in all junior highs and high schools in Chandler. The students assigned to the board would represent the student body's mental health and speak to the administrator for the school every month throughout the year. Furthermore, we are asking for mental health first aid training for all staff and students. This will help everyone be prepared in the case of a mental health crisis and prepare and prevent as many tragedies as possible. Without these resources, the students' mental health will continue to decline rapidly. This will not only affect their personal lives, but their academic lives too. Their grades will deteriorate as their mental health does. Did you know that 49% of students suffer from some sort of mental illness? That's 49% of the student body whose grades, attendance, and academic features may be affected by their mental illness due to the fact that they have inadequate resources to help them.
These students who've lost their lives may have just been numbers to you, but they mean so much more than that to so many other people whose lives will be forever impacted by their loss. Thank you for your time, that's all.
Next is from Chandler to speak to mental health.
Good evening. My name is I'm 17 years old and an upcoming senior at Chandler High School. I have struggled with my own mental health, and I know how hard it is when there isn't support available at school. Due to the lack of resources, I had to transfer online for my second semester of my junior year. This was not my ideal situation, and it only made me more isolated. Chandler students are in a mental health crisis. We're struggling, and our personal and academic lives are suffering. We have lost 4 students to suicide just in this past month. This is horrible news, and it feels as if no one is addressing it. Suicide affects everyone in our community. We are all connected, whether it's through friends, family, or social media. Every parent, student, and teacher is devastated when they find out that a young person with a future feels that they no longer belong here. And it's even more devastating that there wasn't something out there to help them. Our organization, Arizona Students for Mental Health, is advocating for a change. We're asking for a student action board. This would mean every junior high and high school would have a couple students represent their school each at monthly meetings to advocate for our needs. We also need every student and staff member to undergo mental health first aid training. This will make us all better equipped to handle crises and recognize the signs of suicidal ideation. This improved support will not only make our students happier and healthier, but will improve our academics as well. When you're struggling with your mental health, it is so much harder to show up to school, study for tests, and participate as we normally would. A quote by Karen Young states that brains will first ask, am I safe? Then, am I loved? Only when the answer to these is yes will it then be ready to ask, what can I learn? This perfectly sums up how struggling students are unable to prioritize their education. When students feel safe, loved, and supported, we'll function so much better in our classes. CUSD students are struggling, and we need your help. I urge you to listen to us and take action on this matter so the tragedies that happened to our community this year won't happen again. Thank you.
Next is from Chandler to speak on LGBT rights.
I am an incoming junior at Hamilton High School, and I'm here to speak about LGBT rights in schools. Schools are meant for students, but recent actions taken by this board, and as well as the city and state governments, tell a very different story. Complying with state law, CUSD restricts transgender students from playing sports. Mental health resources, especially those for LGBT students, are underfunded and often ignored. LGBT students are also 4 times as likely to die by suicide, and yet the schools stay silent. I ask you, what is being done? What is being done to protect our students and listen to their voices? Unfortunately, the answer is very little. 93% of LGBT students have heard simple homophobic remarks, according to a Gleason study, often from teachers. 70% have heard some kind of direct cruelty, such as slurs. A majority of LGBT students have been harassed in some regard, and I know that most of my friends have. Things can be done about these issues. Tempe Union School District condemned Doug Ducey for signing that anti-trans bill and allowed those trans athletes to play. And many districts across the nation treat discriminatory actions as if they were bullying, protecting minority students. They also implement procedures to educate teachers on LGBT rights and issues, as well as mental health. These solutions are just within reach. Make schools a place for students again. Define your equity goals, reach to meet them, and take a position of protection for your students and your schools. Please. Thank you.
Next is of Chandler to speak about mental health.
Good evening. My name is I'm 13 years old. I go to Santan Junior High and will be entering the 8th grade next year. I'm here with Arizona students from mental health to talk about mental health in schools. In the past few years, I've struggled with mental health and watched my friends struggle with it. And as I'm sure many of you know, it's so hard to watch someone you love go through something like this, not knowing what you can do to help, and in the end, if it'll be enough. According to the CDC, in 2020 alone, there are 163 suicide deaths in Arizona. Those numbers have increased since then and will continue to rise if we do not take action, and that's why I'm here today. We want a student action board for junior highs and high schools. This will allow for students to discuss what they need. We also want better mental health first aid training for students and staff alike, better preparing them for what to do to help and potentially save a student struggling with their mental health. Not only will this improve test scores and attendance, allowing students to better focus on schoolwork, but it will also save students' lives, which is the top priority of all the people in this room. I'm speaking on behalf of all the students who did not feel heard, who believe they're better off dead than alive. If we all work together, we can decrease suicide rates and save students' lives. Please do not let this opportunity pass you by. Please do not let another student die. You can contact us at azstudentsformentalhealth@gmail.com with any questions or concerns you might have. Thank you for your time.
Next is Jeff Davis of Chandler to speak about the loss of student life.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Jeff Davis, been a Chandler resident since 1983, and I'm here to talk about mental health, but I think everybody else has already done that. I'm representing the Arizona Peer and Family Coalition, which is a group of about 180 people around the state who are peers and families of folks who've had mental illness and professionals. I'm here to ask everyone here as a community, how are we going to heal this? And I would like to know how, as a board, I guess, everybody's looking at you guys, how the community can have oversight on what these folks are asking for and how you're going to spend the $5 million. I'd like us all to come back next month to hear what your plan is. Is that a possibility? So I'm seeing people going, yes. Okay.
This portion, we're not allowed to really speak back, but I'm going to answer your question, sir, because I appreciate you being here. Mr. Day, a ton of respect for you. You know that, and we're here. This is our family. We feel it as well. We are united. You're never alone. Not only these people, but you have a district behind you. Nobody should go through this. That is correct. The resources that we spend will be out of request per proposal. We were in plans for this for the last 6 months to go ahead and push mental health and behavioral health services into our schools at a higher degree. That came back from feedback on surveys, as well as feedback from our parents and from our staff, that we could utilize some of our funding to be able to do that. And that was one of the initiatives that we wanted to increase. So it takes some time to do that. We've committed also to some resources that are out there to explain exactly what we do in schools, because not all that's known. And I think some of the folks in here helped us understand that we're not the best communicators of what we do, and we will do better at that. Because there's a lot of stuff in place that our kids need to know about, and our staff needs to know about, and our parents. And some of you in the audience have already had meetings with us and told us that. And so we do listen. The other thing, too, is we're committing to forums. We're going to work with the city. We already have made contact with them to have forums. Mr. Day, I'd like you at those forums. I'd like anybody that's experienced a trauma like this to be with us at these forums, to do it together. But we're going to bring in national experts. This is a national problem. It's a state problem, but it's a local effect. We never want a family to go through this. We don't want any child to go through this. You're all speaking on behalf of all of our kids, and we appreciate it. To never feel you're not heard. It hurts all of us. So lots of answers that need to move forward. A lot of planning that is taking place right now, and we will continue to bring groups in around this initiative, mental health and behavioral health. If we can stop one, that's fantastic. We do a lot, and we've stopped many, but if we don't stop all, we haven't met our goal. The city is committed to going into this with us, and the forums will start up in the fall. But it can't be a one and done shot, as I heard one of our students say. It's got to be a continuous effort, and we're committing to that.
I appreciate that. The organization I'm with, the Arizona Peer and Family Coalition, would love to be part of the conversation. And I think we've made some inquiries, and I think we've kind of been rebuffed somewhat. I also represent NAMI, Arizona. National Alliance of Mental Illness. And also, I don't represent them, but Mental Health America is very interested in what's going on here. And so you'll probably see some correspondence from them. But I'm really encouraged by what you said, but I would like to be able to come back here in a month and hear more detail and have some oversight over what's happening. And I'm seeing you shake your head yes. So I appreciate that. And I'm really impressed by the powerful thoughts and things that all you students had to say. It was incredible. And really glad to hear what you had to say. I'm sorry for the situation. I don't see how anybody can walk out of here without a few tears. But anyways, thank you for your time.
Next is Constantine Lupiget of Chandler to speak about parents and students.
Wow, I don't even remember what I was going to talk about because this is so impressive. All of these students standing up from all the communities, from LGBTQ to students that are dealing with mental health, affecting all of us. I'm so impressed by you guys. And I do sometimes feel that when there's an issue and we come to the school board or we call an administrator, I feel like we're rebuffed sometimes, that nobody wants to answer. People get defensive when we call and we have questions. That needs to change. You know, it's not so much transparency about what books our kids are reading, but more about the communication between the school board, the administrators, and parents and students. That needs a big overhaul on the communication aspect of working together, and for parents to not have to feel like you're being defensive against us, like we're saying something wrong when we have a problem and we want to talk to you guys about it. That should never happen. Our kids should never feel like they're a problem if they want to discuss a problem. And I really hope you will take this into consideration and do some action plans, make some changes, seriously. Because like he said, you all are elected. We can vote you out. Do the research, students. Find out who you would like to represent you. You can't vote yet, but your parents can. Educate your parents about
30
who's
seconds.
representing you and what you want to see happen in our school district. Okay? Thank you.
Next is Ann Adams of Chandler to talk about parent-school partnerships to prevent suicide.
Good evening. I recently watched my son go to 2 funerals last week. Sorry. I just want to say a big thanks to Brenda Vargas and Ken James for meeting with 3 mothers who sat down with them wanting to know how we can work this out, how we can come up with a better plan to prevent suicide, because there were a lot of signs and sometimes these kids don't even know what to do. Like, they know. This was all over social media for one of the children. And the school was called. There was a lot of signs. And kids sometimes feel like snitches get stitches. Like, they don't even know to go to talk to an adult. They don't know the proper steps to take in order to alert someone of what's going on, because there were definite signs. But when I did go to the meeting, at first I was angry. I was like, nothing's going on, nothing's happening. And when I sat at the meeting, I realized we have a lot out there for our families that's already there. The problem is we had 3 mothers sitting in a room with Ken James, and I think he was shocked because we were like, he said, we've sent out all these resources through email to you. Well, you have 3 busy mothers sitting in the room just going, okay, we get 100 emails from you people and we don't pay attention to all of them. So that's a big problem. So maybe if there's a way for us to, we talked about simple action steps that these students could do, like at the beginning of the school year, some of these resources that you have, like the Friend Ask app, they all have their phone in their hand, have them download it the first day of school. Or right now, because they say a suicide can happen within 90 days of all of these suicides that we just saw. So it's not like something we can wait until next school year. So it is imperative that we continue to take action through the summer. And I encourage these kids, maybe just share some of the resources that are there with your friends through text messaging, and mothers share it with other mothers. I think that's a quick and easy way, at least over the summer, to get some of these resources out, because I have to say, email I don't think is the best communication method, not with busy mothers. There was a Friend to Ask app, and the Student Action Group could certainly look into that. And one of the police officers, there was a police officer in the room that talked about this mobile crisis resource that they use when they actually know of a suicide, or they have all these warning signs, or it's on social media everywhere, that you could actually maybe implement if you know there's just an imperative problem or an imminent risk, which we kind of knew in this situation. I think that we need to encourage parents to work and students to work with the school together. We all need to hold hands together and work together. We need more parent involvement, more parent volunteers. Again, we need parents in our hallways. We need kids that are working on this problem. I think that it's a community-wide effort that's going to be needed. And I think we can all work together. Again, I just want to say I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to at least sit down and learn about some of these programs that are already in place, but we need a better job done on implementation of what you guys have. Thank you very much.
Next, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Is it Benoit Leroux? You could correct me if you would.
Thank you. That was Benoit Leroux.
Okay.
Great respect to all the families here with urgent business. I have a little side topic, if you don't mind, please, indulging. And thank you for the board for your attention. My 12-year-old twins invested 7 years in the Tar-Water Mandarin DLI program. They are both near the top of their class in Mandarin competency, on track to eventually earn the Arizona Seal of Biliteracy in Mandarin. We have been delighted with the implementation of the Tar-Water Elementary School Mandarin DLI program. However, as my children enter the 7th grade, we are not pleased with recent changes to the Mandarin DLI program at Bogle Junior High School. Our concerns include a decommitment after years of promises of the immersion aspect of the Mandarin dual language immersion program. 2, the implementation of a just announced Mandarin culture second elective, which is a great class, by the way, but if that is taken along with the Mandarin basic first elective, this will deny our students an opportunity to take any other electives. And 3, limited forward visibility and communications regarding these changes. With great reluctance, because of the likely impact to our children's Mandarin proficiency next year, we and other concerned parents have declined the new Mandarin culture second elective. We have done this in order to allow our children to take
30 seconds.
Non-Mandarin elective, such as art, music, etc. So, that said, on behalf of my wife and I, and other concerned parents in the Mandarin program, may I ask, please, that the CUSD board consider reviewing and improving the implementation of the Mandarin program for the next 23 to 24 school year so that our children can maintain their Mandarin proficiency growth without sacrificing both of their school electives. Thank you for considering.
Next is from Chandler to speak about LGBTQ student mental health.
Good evening. My name is I am 16 years old and a rising junior at Hamilton High School, and I represent the student interest organization Support Equality Arizona Schools. We work to improve equity and diversity in our school boards, our city, and our state. As you know, recently 3 students within 2 weeks in CUSD have taken their own lives. Suicide and mental health is a large issue that is experienced highly by students, especially those who identify within minority groups. LGBTQ students are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their straight counterparts. Additionally, racial, ethnic, and religious minorities often experience higher rates of mental illness and depression. We often hear things both in this council and outside where people say, students don't see color, or discrimination is the same thing as bullying. This is reflected by the wider community when 93% of students experience some sort of discrimination when they identify as LGBTQ in our Arizona schools. Although they might come from a place of misunderstanding or kindness, this is ultimately ignorant of the differences that work to put students at unique identities and lived experiences in the way that they process our world. We need to comprehensively invest in mental health that is one-on-one, specific, and targeted during school hours. This means that we need to increase resources such as equity boards as well as student interest boards, as reiterated by many of the students speaking here today. Proper care within schools means that every student's worth and potential is cultivated by the necessary mental health and equity resources, and I urge everyone in this board today to consider these issues. Thank you so much.
Our final speaker tonight is Patty Serrano of Chandler to talk about mental health.
Good evening. Emotional night. Mr. Day, I know I don't know you, but I'm sorry our current system failed your son. To every student here, I'm very sorry we're not doing good enough and that you have to take time of your summer to advocate for your childhood and young adult needs as students. My name is Patty Serrano, and I am here today as a concerned, and more recently, like many, a sad mom. In our district, we're sad due to the recent tragic and alarming events taking place in our own school communities and nationally, as noted by President Marsden. I am here to encourage us all, but especially our decision makers, to listen, learn, and follow our students' lead in these regards and responses as they know their situations best. Acknowledging we do have some mental health resources, students and families are clearly advocating for greater resources and support. We must ask ourselves if we're truly doing all we can to provide this needed support in a clear and meaningful way, including working with those directly impacted, our students. How does our investment compare to other resources is a really important question. Do we adults truly know what ending a school year with news of peers' deaths by suicide is like? I know I don't. Do we know what it might feel like to walk up to a school with police lights on a week that may be alarming and may not indicate safety? We must include our students in this decision-making and responding. Please heed our students' requests for more and better and commit our district to creating a safer place for all of our students. As we know, our
That was our last speaker for this evening. I want to thank everyone for coming out and talking to us about this very difficult topic. Mr. Day, again, I express my sincere condolences in the loss of your son. And students, I appreciate you talking to us about some of the, organization that you're with and how it can help our students. Thank you so much for being here. We do know, from my opening reflection, we know that we have seen a lot of young lives lost, not only through suicide, but also through through shootings. And something has to be done, and we're committed to helping with that to get resources to our students and improve safety within our community. So thank you so much. We do need to move on to our consent agenda this evening, and that is going to be presented by Mr. Narducci.
Madam President, members of the board, we have a long consent agenda item. I'll try to make it go through it so that I would like to spend a little time with Mr. Day if I can after this.
Okay.
Out-of-state student travel and planning, out-of-state field trip pre-planning form for Chandler High School is provided. Following governing board pre-approval, the superintendent designee, which is Dr. Gilbert, will monitor the trip arrangements before providing final approval. The governing board will receive a summary of final travel arrangements quarterly. Final trip approval will be determined on a case-by-case basis contingent on the current health guidelines in the place our students are going. Monetary gifts, we request the approval of $153,671.72. And under donations, we request the approval of $18,942.75. Under Dynamic PE ASAP, Dynamic PE ASAP provides K-12 lesson plans that provide teachers with sequenced and structured lessons. Dynamic PE ASAP K-12 resources will be used district-wide by teachers who provide K-12 physical instruction, and also in conjunction with open education, physical education resources. Having access to both resources provides teachers a balance of traditional physical education activities with activities that reflect a student-centered approach. Total cost for the Dynamic PE ASAP K-12 resources is $0. In accordance with ARS 15721, access to the curriculum was placed on display at 60-day public review period for comment at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center starting March 31st, 2022, and there were no comments. Open education, physical education, education provides pre-K through 12 outcome-based resources focused on engaging students in learning with positive communication, effective discussion, instructional flexibility, and responsive at no cost. Teachers will be provided 3 hours of professional development to learn how to access, plan, and use these resources and Dynamic PE ASAP K-12 resources. Total cost for the program is $0. In accordance with ARS 15721, access to the curriculum was also on display for the 60-day public review period at the Instructional Resource Center starting March 31st, 2022, and there were no comments. Under resolution to sign vouchers between board meetings, the school district is allowed to stamp vouchers with board members' signatures between board meetings as long as the voucher is ratified by the board at its regularly scheduled meeting. The resolution covers July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. Maricopa County garnishment resolution. In order to continue having Maricopa County process Chandler Unified School District's garnishments, an updated resolution with current board member signatures must be submitted annually. Under National School Lunch Program, approval is requested annually to provide and participate in the National Lunch Program. The agreement hasn't changed, but the signatures have been updated. Technology facilities, office furniture. The district is requesting board approval to purchase office furniture for the new technology facility at the Perry High School auxiliary building per the quote provided. The office furniture will furnish 5 informational technology office areas to accommodate up to 48 staff, a training room, 3 administrator offices, a conference room, a copy room, a break room, a repair configuration center, and 2 warehouse areas that will accommodate up to 25 field service technicians. With board approval, the office furniture will be purchased from School Source in the amount of $542,422.58, and that including tax, freight, and installation utilizing 1 GPA contract 19-02PV-10, excuse me. We also have a contract with Sampson Equipment. The district is requesting approval to purchase weight room equipment and sports flooring for the Basha High School weight room from Sampson Equipment utilizing Omnia Partners contract R201103 in the amount of $228,582,090.96. Clubs USD extracurricular activities. This is a supplemental RFP number 12-23-23. We are requesting the board approve an award of contracts to the vendors listed below to provide enrichment activities at various sites on as needed basis as determined by the Director of Community Education for our Club COSD program. Multiple awards are being made because each vendor provides a different program that allows the district the opportunity and the ability to provide a larger selection of activities for parents to choose for their students. The companies are Nerding LLC, Playwell Technologies, Reigning Champs League, Zen Yoga, Challenge Island Chandler, Under the Lights Flag Football, Planting Seeds, Tutoring, and Test Prep. The contracts will be for 1 year. This type of contract is advantageous to the district by promoting efficiency while maintaining fair and reasonable costs at the same time. 512 is Basha High and Castile High School varsity baseball bleachers. The current bleachers at the varsity baseball field at Basha High School as well as Castile High School are inadequate to provide seating necessary to accommodate the number of community members and fans that attend the varsity home games. The district will contract with Norcon Industries Incorporated on the Mojave contract MESC 17H NSEQ 00930, which complies with all the procurement rules and procedures in the amount of $147,444.20 per school. We recommend approval of Norcon Industries Incorporated for the Basha High School and Castile High School varsity baseball bleachers in the amount of $294,888.40. Under 513, Basha High, Chandler High, and Hamilton High School basketball shot clocks. The Arizona Interscholastic Association, known as the AIA, has approved the use of basketball shot clocks for boys and girls basketball beginning with the 22-23 school year. The shot clocks at Basha High, Chandler High, and Hamilton High are either not installed or are not operable and need to be installed or replaced. The cost breakdown by site is as follows. Basha High School, $19,962.50. Chandler High School, $19,962.50. Hamilton High School, $16,255.09. We recommend approval of Norcon Industries Incorporated for the Basha High, Chandler High, and Hamilton High boys and girls basketball shot clocks for the amount of $56,180.09. Under 514, AZC Tech membership updates for fiscal year 23. The Arizona CTE Curriculum Consortium, an intergovernmental agreement for CTE teacher resources, instructional materials, and professional development. The board approved the initial intergovernmental agreement in June of 2013. The IGA was renewed and signed by both CUSD and Pima JTED in the November 2016 meeting and again in August of 2020. The current IGA expires June 30th, 2025. Through our participation, CUSD will receive quality professional development for our CTE, career technology education, teaching staff to enhance teaching and learning as well as access to online electronic library of consortium CTE instructional materials. And these are materials to run our CTE programs, referred to as CTE Curriculum Connection. The cost to CUSD associated with the program membership, maintenance, ongoing development, and necessary revisions is projected not to exceed $19,332.50 for the 22-23 school year. Career and technical education funding will be utilized to fund the CUSD's participation. The IGA with AZCTE Curriculum Consortium 2020 to 2021 is provided, and all signatures included with Exhibit A. Exhibit B does not apply to CUSD in those two exhibits that you received. And then last one is 515, Human Resources, Employment, Separation, and Compensation. We ask for you to approve that as defined.
Thank you, Mr. Narducci. Could I please get a motion from the board?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Worth, could you actually say what you're moving?
We recommend approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you. And it has been seconded. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we move on to our action items, and our first one this evening is our 2021-2022 metrics for Journey 25 for the final report. And this evening, Dr. Jennifer Fletcher will be presenting. Dr. Fletcher.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. This evening, I'm going to read the agenda item, and then I will have a short presentation for you. I, Dr. Jennifer Fletcher, Executive Director of Accountability, Assessment, and Research, presented the 2021-2022 metrics for Journey 2025 for review and discussion during the board retreat, which included finalized scores, expected scores based on previous trend data for those elements that did not yet have finalized scores. Several of the metrics were impacted due to the ongoing challenges experienced throughout the year due to COVID-19, i.e. 4B, 5A, and 6A. The measures below provide examples of the challenges that were captured within the data. Service learning hours, 4B, students were unable to serve the community throughout the year. Dropout rate, 5A, due to the pandemic, CUSD and the state experienced an increase in dropout rate by 1.1% and 2% respectively. Graduation rate, 6A, due to the pandemic, CUSD and the state experienced a decline in graduation rate by 2% and 2.4% respectively. Additionally, trend data revealed that employer of choice 8A and 8C data, while valuable, were not measuring the questions accurately. And finally, CUSD had incomplete pipeline data for L and 4M, making it unfair to hold Chandler Unified School District accountable with a partial data set. As such, we request approval of the 2021-22 Journey 2025 metrics with the suspension of service learning hours, 4B, suspension of employer of choice, likelihood to recommend, which is 8A, and employer of choice proud to work at CUSD, 8C, removal of CUSD pipeline data, community colleges and state institutions, which is 4L and 4M, and the adjustment to the rubric for dropout rate 5A and graduation rate 6A. That was a long one. I'm sorry for whoever has to do the motion on that. All right, so a brief presentation on our Journey 2025 board metrics for this school year. All right, board goal 1 is our equity in student perception and achievement and access. 1A, we were a rubric score of 4, having 80% of students agree or strongly agree that their site has a positive climate and dispositions on our school climate survey. We were a rubric score 4 on school discipline policy events per capita, being below 0.10 events per student. Rubric score 4 for our enrollment rates in advanced programs, being at least 25.5%. Our overall statewide assessment data results, we were at least 60% across all of our equity categories, meeting a rubric score of 3 in ELA and math. At least 40% of our students are college ready on the 3 ACT exams, rubric score 3, and our graduation rates by category with our target graduation rate of 93%, you can see is a rubric score of 1, which we will discuss those graduation rates here momentarily. Board goal 2, grade level proficiency. So our statewide assessment results in ELA and math, we were a 4, exceeding the state by 15 percentage points in at least 75% of the subject areas. On our district growth proficiency data on School City and Dibbles, at least 90% of our elementary schools had 75% of their students demonstrating expected growth, which we were extremely proud of because we anticipated being a rubric score of 3, but we did meet a 4. Board goal 3 is focused particularly on our 3rd grade reading. Using the statewide assessment data, we were at a rubric score of 3 at 59% of our grade 3 students who were highly proficient or proficient on the statewide assessment. On our 3rd grade district assessment data, again, we were extremely excited to see a 4 because we anticipated being a 3. So at least 90% of our elementary sites had 75% of their students maintaining or exceeding their growth level. Board Goal 4, indicators for college and career readiness. Our students, I am excited to announce, earned over $185 million in scholarships this year, making us a rubric score of 4. 4B, we mentioned, service learning hours is being requested to suspend because students could not get into the community to do their service learning hours this year. 4C, we had 41 National Merit Scholars and Flynn Scholars, making us a rubric of 4. Advanced placement tests were down this year. We had 6,632, making us a rubric score of 1. However, of the students who took advanced placement tests, what's my percentage on that? 75% were passing, making us a rubric score of 4. Continuing on with board metric 4, our ACT, so F, G, H, and I are all the ACT assessments. Mathematics, English, and science, we were a rubric score of 4. CUSD was ranked number 1. And then in reading, we were ranked number 2, making us a rubric score of 3. Our International Baccalaureate exams, we had 201 exams taken with an average score of 4.37, making us a rubric score of 3.
Dr. Fletcher, could you back up so math, we were number 1 like in the whole state?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, ranked number 1 on math, English, and science, number 2 in reading. Yep. Dual credit hours, we were a rubric score of 3 this year. And rounding out the indicator 4 for college and career readiness, as I mentioned, we would like to remove 4L and 4M because we only have partial data sets. We are working to gather complete data sets for the future, but at this time we do not have them. And then 4N for career and technical education, we were well above the 80% of high school placements of senior concentrators. All right, 5 is student dropout rate. We request the adjustment to dropout rate due to the pandemic and the shifts that occurred both in the district and in the state. So this rubric is now going to read dropout rate is at least 2.5 percentage points below the Arizona state dropout rate. So we will compare the state's dropout rate to the district's dropout rate. And this year we were a difference of 2.48, making us a rubric score of 3. And as the board approved in September, we were not utilizing chronic absences because of the pandemic. Board Goal 6 graduation rate, similar to dropout rate, and as we discussed at the board retreat, graduation rate was also affected due to the pandemic, so we are adjusting the rubric to say the 4-year graduation rate will be at least 14 percentage points higher than the Arizona state 4-year graduation rate. Using this, we will be a rubric score of 4. We were actually 15.08 percentage points higher than the state, who was at 75%, and we are above 90%. And then graduation rate B is our percentage of 9th grade students who attain 5.5 credits during their first year of enrollment in high school. We are a rubric score of 2, which is up from a 1 last year. Our market share student charter mobility rate within CUSD will not exceed 2.5%. We are at 1.78%, making us a rubric score of 4. Employer of choice, as discussed at the board retreat, 8A and 8C, the questions are not accurately reflecting what is needed to be measured. And so the board agreed and discussed on removing those, which would make us using 8B. Our retention rate, which is at 93.3% for the current year, a rubric score of 4. District of choice, parents responded, 93% of parents responded that their youngest child's school was an A or a B on the West Group survey, giving us a rubric score of 4. Percentage of dollars spent in the classroom, we are number 3 in the state per the Auditor General's report, so we are in the top 10% of all districts, making us a 4. Outside contributions to meet or exceed 2.5% of our maintenance and operations budget. We were at roughly $9.5 million this year, making us a rubric score of 4. And then communication with the community. At least 85% of our respondents rate CUSD as an A or B on the West Group survey, and we were at 87%, making us a 4. What this results in is we take the averages of each component, So equity is right 1A through F. We take the average, resulting in a 3.17. 2 for proficiency is a 4. We take all of those averages, total them up, so we have a total points earned of 44.13 out of an eligible points of 48, resulting in a 91.94% for the district. Questions?
Thank you, Jennifer, or Dr. Fletcher, appreciate it. I think we'll go ahead and ask for a motion first, and then during our discussion time, if you could please stay up at the podium, that will be when we have any questions for you. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 Journey 2025 metrics with the suspension of service learning hours, 4B, suspension of employer of choice likelihood to recommend, 8A, and employer of choice proud to work at CUSD, 8C, removal of CUSD pipeline data, community colleges and state institutions, for, is that an L?
Yes.
L. Yeah.
For L. Sorry, my glasses are fogging up. Removal of CUSD pipeline data, community colleges for M, and the adjustment to the rubric for dropout rate 5A and graduation rate 6A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Do we have any questions for Dr. Fletcher? Mrs. Bruner.
I was wondering what you think we should replace or what is the best way to judge employee belief in the school district, and what do we need to put there instead? Like, what is an evidence-based survey question for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we need to be careful with our wording, right? We need to make sure we're evaluating the district as a whole, maybe not necessarily just a particular school site. And then personally, one of the things that we have not discussed this in great detail would look at a growth year over year, right? Making sure that we are improving year over year, because that's what makes our strategic plan and makes us have a viable something to work towards, instead of just having a target that we've never attained, which is what that metric has always done, right? So I think we need to establish a strong question that ensures we're measuring accurately based on the district, how we want to define it. So it might need to be a longer worded question, and then looking at a growth component of that over time.
And Board Member Bruner, if I can add on to that. Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. It's a very ambiguous question because we've gotten feedback from individuals who've taken the survey who say, well, we feel that it's the state that doesn't really respect the profession. And so we want to clarify, and maybe we're going to ask West Group, how's a better way to separate a feeling tone of, is it the feeling tone of, is it parents that don't respect education? Is it the teachers a feeling that the state doesn't? Because there's a lot of things that fall on how their decision is to answer that question. And so we really never dug into, but we hear ambiguity around that question every year. And it has been a question that kind of stayed stagnantly, and we want to see it moving for the better. Like Dr. Fletcher said, we want to see it growing, but we don't see it going because a lot of it back to the even Red for Ed days, kind of confused people with what does that question really mean? So I would like to separate that out a little bit so that we can get true reflective data as to where that's coming from.
And I think, even from the state level, when they do climate surveys and those kind of things, you will hear so many staff be like, they did not ask the questions that mattered. Like, what keeps me in this profession? We're not asking that. And I don't know who has the best questions or where we could get that from, what organizations have done research on that. But that'd be awesome if we could maybe not just have one question, but, check on that, do some pulse surveys or, whatever it might be next school year to let people know they're heard, and then to bring change in ways that we can, at least with our limited resources, to what we can affect. So,
Agreed. You just gave me some really good ideas.
Great. Ms. Love.
I think my concern wasn't necessarily like with the wording around that one. Like, my concern was tying it to like teacher surveys and feeling like if teachers are genuinely honest and they don't feel, or they feel a way about the district, then we're penalizing them in a sense. So is there a way of kind of getting that data without it penalizing them? That was my thought. I know we talked a lot about that in the retreat, because, we want them to be honest, but, them being honest could be a detriment to them.
Right, and I think, Dr. Fletcher, I'll let you respond to that too. Councilmember Love, I think the other part that we want to look at too is there's two philosophies of thought on that, right? You answered a certain way so that you're not penalized. And then another way might be, you're going to answer it another way so you can get the money. And we don't want either of those pieces. We just want true, accurate data. So there's got to be a way to phrase those questions that a person isn't going to say, I'm going to vote a certain way so that I get the money. And we get true reflective data. And the other one is we also don't want it to be something that we want them to be honest and open with that as well.
But is that in terms of phrasing the questions? I think if the question was phrased appropriately and they answered it honestly, and I'm sure we have some educators here in the audience who can provide feedback on that. But if they answered the question honestly, and gave you the honest feedback, they're still kind of shooting themselves in the foot at the end of the day.
Well, if you took the money out of the equation and asked the question later as not a part of something that's going to affect their compensation, then that you've got a lot better chance of getting an honest answer, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. If it were me and I was given a survey and told that it was tied to my check, I would be happy all day. I'd be like, oh, somebody spit in my eye. I'm still happy. Give me my money. Right? And so it does feel like we're penalizing teachers for being, or staff for being honest when, and I think, I said it in the retreat, it feels more like an opportunity for intervention and a cry for help, as opposed to, well, let's just take this off of here and then you get less money at the end of it because you weren't happy.
So I think what I hear is a rephrasing of the questions to accurately match the information we're trying to receive, not the answer we want to get, but the information we want to try to receive. And so we will do that and bring
Frank,
that back.
is just remove it from the metric.
Or remove it from the metric, right?
But make sure that we ask and are looking for what people are thinking so that we can retain our highly qualified staff.
Yeah, the questions are important. Right, we want to know that, but I don't know that it necessarily has a place in this because, I'm not going to be honest if it's tied to my check because I want that money, right? But is there a different forum for us to ask for that feedback where it's not tied to their money?
I'm sure there's some opportunities to explore on that, and to be able to get that sense of what is needed and where we're at with that type of stuff. And it may be that, for this time, we're not utilizing it. Yeah. We've asked the question or axed it. And we can, again, we're going to have to determine the metrics for next school year in the not too distant future. And I think that there's some good opportunity for discussion and ideas and what we can do to get what we really are looking for out of this. Okay. So, are there any other comments or questions from the board? All right. All those in favor of approving the metrics, which incidentally does show us that all of our staff will be getting those who work full-time will be getting the full amount of $600, and that those who work up to 20 hours, is it? Or yeah, 20 hours will receive half of that. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Next, we have a proposed increase in breakfast and lunch prices for the 2022-2023 school year. Mrs. Berry. Just one moment. Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. I appreciate it.
Madam President, members of the board, Each year, the Food Service Department must evaluate its annual budget to assess the needs to increase meal prices. School food authorities depend on two sources of revenue to cover costs associated with the National School Breakfast and Lunch programs, funds collected from paid student meals, and federal reimbursement. Prices have not been increased since 2019-2020 school year due to the participation in the universal free meal programs. However, the costs associated with the programs have increased significantly due to inflation with both food and labor costs. The Food and Nutrition Department is recommending price increases for the 22-23 school year as listed below. Increase breakfast price district-wide from $1.75 to $2. Increase elementary lunch price from $2.95 to $3. Junior highs and high school lunch prices will stay the same at $3.25 and $3.50. Request approval to raise approval to raise breakfast prices of 25 cents district-wide from $1.75 to $2, and the elementary lunch price from $2.95 to $3 to meet the projected food and labor costs for the 22-23 school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the proposed breakfast price increase of 25 cents and elementary lunch price increase of 5 cents to cover increased food and labor costs associated with the school food service program.
Second.
All right, do we have any questions for Mrs. Berry? Yes, Mr. Worth.
Lan, I thought I heard or read somewhere that there was some movement to just make all the meals free.
So currently we do have the universal free program, but it ends this fiscal year, and so next year we don't know. There is a lot of lobbying going on at the federal level to sustain some of that, and Jenny Bracamonte is here, our Director of Food and Nutrition, but unfortunately right now we don't have the answer to that. So it could go back to where you have paid, free, and reduced like prior to COVID. So we're preparing for that, but there's definitely lobbying going on at the federal level. It's not a state issue, it's a federal level, so happening at the federal level to keep that, but we still don't know the answer to that, right, Jenny? There's no new news on that right now.
Another question is, I know that Arizona indexes some of their minimum wage for inflation, and we're probably looking at they're estimating that it might be up to like a 75-cent to $1 type range due to inflation. How is that going to impact since a lot of our people in our food service are hourly individuals and sometimes student workers in the cafeterias during the day at the high schools. Will this amount be able to cover those increases in the minimum wage?
Yes, I do believe that it'll help. So great questions, Ms. Marsden. It's going to help, and then probably in the future we'll have to bring it back depending on what happens at the federal level, because food costs and labor costs are both going up. And as you know, we give a 4% increase to our classified staff. So we're very thankful for that because we need to attract and retain quality staff, but also the cost is going up, so we need to increase the prices. But again, hoping at the federal level, I know that we partner with Earmark and they're working with their lobbyist at the federal level to try to help as much as possible on that side. But again, we'll bring back more information as soon as we know. This summer, hopefully we'll know more from the federal level.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Mrs. Bruner?
I did just want to ask if you happen to know for the qualifying for free and reduced lunch, what does that look like for next year? Has that bumped up to a fairly equitable level as what we're looking at for this and also for inflation in general?
Sure, and I might let Jenny talk a little bit about that, and if we know there's going to be struggles in that area.
Yes, so the free and reduced table that ties to the free and reduced applications is not released yet, so we don't really know what those income levels are going to be. We're actually not even allowed to collect free and reduced applications yet for the following school year. Our application will be approved by the state roughly around July 1st through the 3rd. And as soon as that happens, then we will have the tables and income associated with those free and reduced guidelines. We will do a massive campaign to try to get as many students that qualify on free and reduced lunch as possible.
I'm a little worried because, people have been used to it just automatically happening, and I'm wondering if we're going to have some kids not be able to afford things
Yes.
because we didn't get that paperwork from them, or that the criteria, the cost is higher now, and so now it's more of a struggle for them than it was before if the rates don't go up to qualify for that.
Right, absolutely. I mean, that does happen at a federal level, so we have no control. We can only try to influence, and we do that through our School Nutrition Association, our state agencies, and I know that Arizona has been very active at the federal level trying to make sure that they're addressing all those needs. Now, what we have seen through the pandemic is that they did raise reimbursement rates, so we assume that that will also be reflected in those rates for free and reduced lunch. And as a department, we work very closely with our schools, with our cafeteria managers, with our counselors to make sure that we're identifying those students early. Again, we'll do a massive communication campaign throughout the district as soon as our application is approved and we can start registering kids for free and reduced lunch for that 22-23 school year. But then as students do return to school, they'll be able to charge lunch for, a while. And we will watch all those negative balances, and we are very active trying to contact those families to get them to fill out that application. So we do really take it as a grassroots, child-by-child approach.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Nope. All right, so all those in favor of the proposed increase in breakfast and lunch prices for next school year, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have the First Amendment to IGA with City of Chandler for SRO's school year 21-22. Dr. Gilbert.
Madam President, members of the board, the original fully executed intergovernmental agreement between the City of Chandler and the Chandler Unified School District for the school year 2020-2023 is attached for your review. The City of Chandler and the district administration is proposing a First Amendment to the original IGA dated May 20, 2021. This First Amendment revises Section 1A to amend the total amount of assigned officers from 7 to 8 officers, and also revises Section 2A to amend the amount of services for school year 2021-2022, which is the year we just completed. Projected total cost for the 8 SROs is $1,115,568, which includes salary and benefits. It is estimated that the Safe Schools Program grant will fund $687,366, and the district will fund 50% of the difference between the grant and the actual SRO salaries and benefits, which totals $428,202. This leaves the district's portion total payment of $214,101 for the 2021-2022 school year. Our district attorney has reviewed and signed, and we are recommending approval. One thing I'd like to share is just a reminder to the board. This is in the rears based on this past school year that we're in because we've had changes from the beginning of the year. Also, I think it's important to note that this is we just completed the second year of a 3-year cycle as it relates to SROs and the funding that comes from the Safe Schools grant that we wrote 2 years ago. So the biggest change has to do with when we first wrote the grant, we were only approved for for the grant to pay for 3 of the SROs within our schools. And since then, there was grant funding that was released that allowed us to pay for more officers. Now, it wasn't officers that we just recently chose. It was actually officers that we put in the grant some time ago that wasn't approved initially, but funds were available, maybe because the school district that they awarded to wasn't able to find someone. I hate for other schools not to get it, but if they weren't able to use it and now they award it to us, that allowed us to increase our officers, just as well as when these grants actually came out. We submitted in the grant for many of our schools to get social workers and counselors. And we initially, in the first part of the grant in that first year, only received 2. Since then, funds have become available and Chandler was welcome to take it. And we now have 10 social workers off the state grant and 1 counselor because funds were available. But you can't get the money unless you initially put it in the grant in the beginning. And we put quite a few things out in the grant. So just as a side note of where we are in the grant. So we have 1 more year left in this grant cycle. So next year is the last year in the grant cycle that we agreed to in the 3 years of approval of the safety grant funds. and this cycle will end next year, and then the grants will come out again unless the state changes something, and then we'd be able to apply. And usually there's a portion to apply for SROs, and there's a portion to apply for counselors or social workers.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Could I please get a motion for this item?
Madam President, I'd like to propose a motion that we approve the First Amendment to the IGA with the City of Chandler for the SROs for the school year 2021-2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussion?
So, no offense, but that was a big discussion. Basically, it's the same as the previous year. Would that be accurate?
No, well, the grant is the same in the sense that we've added an officer. We've added officers to our schools, but it has to do with because we got additional funding from the state safety grant to allow us to do that. So the difference is that we went from having 7 officers on our campuses to 8 officers, and we went from having 3 officers being paid for by the grant to 5 officers being paid for by the grant. So even though we've added an officer, you'll see that we actually reduced the amount that the district is covering, because the district was paying in the first year $250,000. We've added an officer, received more money from the grant, and now we're paying $214,000 and some change here and there.
Thank you.
Ms. Love.
Yeah, so I actually asked for this to be pulled down to the action item because we haven't had an update on this since I first got on the board. And first, I have a lot of questions, but I don't know that this is necessarily the appropriate venue because we don't have SROs here or people here to provide more information. So I would like to ask for a study session, especially in light of things that have happened and questions that parents have had with regards to Uvalde and some of our mental health pieces in terms of like how we utilize these officers, what metrics we're looking for in terms of this, because there are no metrics in terms of SROs and what we hope to achieve like in our Journey 2025, right? And we are a data-driven district. So I guess my question would be, like, for transparency's sake, should we not be talking about this in a study session to determine, like, what are our goals around this?
I think that would be great. We would be happy to come and bring a study session to you. We've been very fortunate. I've been in the district now. I just completed my 24th year, and of those 24 years, 22 I've been an administrator. The last 14 years, safety has been under my umbrella, and I know that. We'd be happy to bring to you the things that we've been doing. I think it's important to note the partnership that we've had since I've been in the district with Chandler PD has been strong, to the point where even though all of our officers aren't on the grant, we have developed a partnership that there's requirements of the grant in regards to law education that the officers have to do, training they have to do, training our administrators have to do. And there's never been any pushback of the officers doing those training, including the officers that aren't on the grant. We felt that if we had officers getting trained on the grant, why isn't that not good for everyone? And the police department had no problem with that. So we'd be happy to set up some time, and I'll work with Mr. Narducci and President Mosden to see when would be the best time to bring our SROs in, some of our principals, some of our leadership from the PD to be able to share with you what we're doing, as well as so that you know what's required by the grant, because there's a lot of requirements that have to be done in the sense of the leadership team at the site and the emergency response piece of the site, and the SRO has to be a part of that. They have to go to emergency response training. All of our administrators have to take classes and FEMA classes. So we'd be happy to share with you what we're doing. Because the biggest thing that we started out with is not just the relationship that the district has with our police department and our fire, because we try to work closely together with all of them, but how do our officers engage on campus so they're building relationships and they're not the heavy. Unfortunately, the district administrators and the site administrators have to be the heavy, or it doesn't make any sense that we have an officer on campus to build relationships.
So, Dr. Gilbert, if we approve this And when we have a study session and there needs to be a change, is that a problem?
Well, I don't know that there'll be a problem. I think what's important to note is that we actually signed on 2 years ago for this grant, and it's a 3-year cycle. So we've already went forward to approve being part of the grant. So to me, it would seem that we'd more be moving forward in what are we doing after this next year? Because ultimately, once you've signed up for the grant, you're approved grant funds for what you've asked for. So we couldn't change anything of the grant currently. Because of what you're bound by, because they're only giving you money for those certain things. That's why we're fortunate that when additional funds were available, we were only able to get funds for those things that we had asked for initially.
But Dr. Gilbert, just one quick clarification, because I'm not sure that this is actually, basically, this is almost like the reconciliation of the grant and the money that is owed to the city of Chandler for SROs that we had during this past year. So if we approve that, it's basically we're paying our portion of for services that we have already received.
Yes, services are rendered, and what normally happens with this grant, now that we received this additional funds and these officers, that will carry over next year, because now it is still in part of that cycle. Even though it came in late, we'll have this going into next year, and then you have to apply again, because it'll reopen. Well, hopefully it reopens, and we can get counselors and SROs and social workers on utilizing that fund.
Yeah, and I understand that. I understand what this is for, and I don't have a problem with voting so that our SROs get the city gets their money, right, for services that are rendered. But I would just like to see what the plan is going forward with this.
Definitely.
Particularly, I think no matter how you feel about SROs, right, I think that we can all agree that our community wants to know a plan, right?
That's not a problem. We'll definitely do that.
Especially with, we've had a lot of emails from parents like, can we build a Sally Port? How do we step up our community in terms of like what we're doing with mental health? And even some who have been like, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with cops on campus, right? I'm that person who doesn't necessarily feel comfortable with cops around kids, right? But no matter how you feel about that, I think that there needs to be some transparency, and I think that people need to know what the plan is.
I think it's a good question. We have no problem with transparency as it relates to our officers on our campus. Not a problem.
I think the study session is warranted. It'll give us a good opportunity to be able to show the SRO program, and I think that's what Ms. Love's asking for. So I think we can get a study session.
You're correct. It's been some time since we've done that. We have in the past. It's just been some time.
Yeah, I mean, like I see cops, but I don't know like what that relationship is like, or what's taking place, or what happened. And I think a lot of parents know too, like, they get a message about, oh, the school is on lockdown, and they have no idea like what that process was and what happens and what the SRO's responsibility is around that. And I think that there needs
just to be clear on lockdowns, we don't want everybody to know what it is, what the process is.
And I'm not saying that, but I think that, parents would feel a little bit more comfortable knowing like how that's decided. Like I know when my building went on lockdown, when I was a therapist, it came from the marshal in the area who would physically get on the phone and say, you need to lock down, there's something going on in your area. And I think too, there's also confusion when parents see lockdown, they start panicking and they assume active shooter. And I think that maybe needs some clarification as well.
Definitely, we can communicate that. We can communicate that much more. And sometimes we're in lockdown because we have a practice lockdown, or sometimes we're in lockdown because there is something happening in the community and we need to go into a lockdown.
Yeah, I think just explaining that would
Definitely
kind of help some families out there as well.
I do believe too that the email system and the text messaging system usually will say something like, there's a lockdown due to a community, something going on in the neighborhood, or things like that. So they kind of know that it's not something that's being centered around campus, that it's more of
parents don't always know what that means. I've gotten
I know, but
and I've wondered what's going on?
You know, and some of the things you are good to know, but some of the things, you know, they're probably they have to have some confidentiality.
And
you
I appreciate that, but I used to run lockdown drills at my office. And I know that when we had lockdown drills, there was processing and debriefing with everybody who was involved so that they knew, right? And so I think even that transparency too. And I think too, like, you know, we heard a bunch of parents and students saying that they want to be involved in solutions, and we haven't given them that. And also too, our lockdown and active shooter drills may be a little outdated, considering that we have students who know what those are, who are now getting of age and becoming active shooters. So I think that we need to revamp and look at some things and talk to our community about how we want to.
And Lindsay, we have just approved a new person as a director of safety who
Well,
is.
I think what's important to note, one, I'd be happy to sit with you and listen to some of your concerns to make sure that when we have a presentation, we'll be able to answer those questions. I mentioned before there's training, and there's training that our administrators and our officers go through every year to be updated on what those trainings should be and how we should be doing lockdowns and active shooting. So we don't have things in place that were years ago. We actually have things in place, what's cutting edge of what they say is the best thing to do within lockdown or what you're doing on your campuses. But I would be happy to sit down and really get your concerns so I can make sure that we answer your questions.
More importantly than just me, I think the community at large.
Well, I'm going off of what you were sharing that was coming to you.
I can share with you what I've heard, but I also think that, you know, I want to make sure that parents have, you know, your ear too. Because I'm not just doing this because I'm bothered because there's cops on campus, right?
Well, I don't mind talking to parents. I get calls all the time, so it's not a problem.
Who want to talk to you.
Lindsay, I think Mr. Worth also has some comments or questions.
I guess I'm very uncomfortable with your statement about not wanting police officers on the campus. Considering on what's going on in the world, that seems like the worst decision we could make. So
well,
I know you've let me finish.
Lindsay addressed me.
I have.
Yes, and
you let him finish, please?
Well, hold on, because he's talked over me before.
I was
talking. Let me
talking.
finish. You may be comfortable with cops on campus, but there are parents sitting out in this audience and students sitting out in this audience who may not. Right? Because what we know is that when we have cops on campus, they disproportionately impact BIPOC students and SPED students. And I will not be silenced about this. We just had parents and students get up and address this. So you feeling comfortable does not negate people in this audience and in our community who do not feel comfortable.
Lindsay, I think that he would like to express what he is feeling comfortable about and let him speak. He was given the floor to speak, and you interrupted. So please let him finish what his thoughts.
You know what, Barb? I interrupted because I heard him over there saying, let somebody else speak. And I let everybody on this board speak. And I gave everybody my... No, I'm not letting you speak.
You're monopolizing it.
I'm not letting you speak. I pulled this myself. I had questions, and I won't be silenced.
And
so
Lindsay,
you can speak. You can speak, but I will not sit up here for a lecture.
And Lindsay, you are actually out of order for what is on the agenda for tonight, and that is paying the police who have been on our campuses.
And if I'm out of order, he is as well for addressing me.
And
so if we could move on, because I don't want this lecture.
Lindsay, I'm going to let Joel have the floor right now, and I assume that you will respect what he has to say, and you will be silent. Joel, you have the floor.
Again, my point is I believe it's important to have officers on the campus based on what's going on in the world right now. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. We will go ahead and conclude. Yes.
Add one thing too. When we had the study session, I was wondering if we could also hear something about any changes to how the officers approach issues. For example, I know a lot of officers, have moved from when there's issues with addiction to getting treatment versus the, more of a punishment kind of mentality. And I was wondering if you could add that into whenever. Thank you.
And Dr. Gilbert, to add to that list, I would like to hear about some of the responsibilities, additional responsibilities that SROs have at the schools, and what the difference would be between an SRO and basically just a beat officer coming into the schools. Because I think is a significant difference, but I don't know what those differences are, and I would really like to hear that. So, we will go ahead and vote on this to approve the First Amendment to the IGA with the City of Chandler for SRO school years 2021-2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? Motion carries. Next, we'll go on to our information items. Our first is the out-of-state student travel pre-planning forms for next school year, the 2022-2023 school year. Dr. Gilbert.
Madam President, members of the board, attached are the 2022-2023 out-of-state student travel planning forms for review. They will be returned for final approval at the June 22nd, 2022 board meeting. Again, this is the initial big chunk of the trips that you see for the year coming up that we bring to you so that you can see what's coming, but at the same time, we try and bring them as early as possible because some of these trips take a lot of planning, and so we bring them early enough so that no fundraiser can start until you approve them, so we try to get them to you early and give you the information early so that you can see them.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Are there any questions for Dr. Gilbert on the travel? All right. We have our student activity auxiliary operations and tax credit reports. Mrs. Berry.
Madam President, members of the board, the student activities, auxiliary operations, and tax credit reports for the months ending July of 2021 through May of 2022 are provided for review. We're getting close to the end of the year.
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. Are there any questions for those reports? Mrs. Berry, when we get to the end of June, how long will it be before we actually see the final reports? It takes, what, about 2 months or so before we get the actual final reports for the 21-22 school year?
Yes, great question. So yes, we have an encumbrance period of 60 days, so it takes us 60 days to finish paying all the bills and then reconciling, and then the annual financial report is due by October 15th, so usually we have everything cleaned up before we present it to the board, and that's usually by October 15th. But usually it takes us 60 to 90 days to clean everything up.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
We now have the Art of Education University Flex curriculum. I believe that's Dr. Edgar.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. The Art of Education University Flex curriculum. There is a need for K-12 visual arts curricular resources. Chandler Unified School District's curriculum and instruction team released a request for information for visual arts curriculum, which closed on March 25th, 2022. Visual arts teachers and educators from around the district reviewed the submissions. Through the review process, the Art of Education University was selected for use in the K-12 setting. The total cost for a 5-year subscription for 10 teachers is $28,566, including tax. In accordance with ARS 15-721 and CUSD policy IJJ, for a period of 60 days starting June 9, 2022, the Art of Education University Flex digital curriculum materials will be placed on display for public review at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center. In addition, digital access to the curriculum will be placed on the curriculum webpage at the district website for review and comment. A final recommendation is anticipated at the August 24th, 2022 Governing Board meeting.
Thank you. Any questions? Mrs. Bruner.
I just had a question about the K-6 level. Like, what does that look like? Is that to embed into by the gen ed teacher, or is that not really being used?
So we wrote this governing board information item as K-12. Right now, we only use the Art of Education at Weinberg Gifted Academy because there is an arts component in their special rotation. And we're looking at increasing that usage to the junior high level next year, which is those 10 teachers for the 5 years, with the potential of increasing the use to the high school level because we did have some high school visual arts teacher come through. So we are looking at just expanding into junior high at this point in time, and we'll be working in the next few years with our elementary education executive director should there be consideration for any changes to the block, including arts.
So it is just for art teachers, though? It isn't something that the gen ed teacher would take and use?
Yes, at this point in time, yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, we'll move on. Dr. Edgar, I believe you have the next one, lesson planning for high school physical education with web resources from Human Kinetics.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Chandler Unified School District's curriculum and instruction team reviewed teacher materials for high school physical education to complement and enhance other adopted resources. Lesson planning for high school physical education with web resources provides teachers with physical education classroom strategies and standards-based lesson plans. The total amount for 35 teachers, including shipping, handling, and tax, is $2,227.77. In accordance with ARS 15-712 and COSD policy IJJ, for a period of 60 days starting June 9, 2022, lesson planning for high school physical education and web resource from Human Kinetics will be placed on display for public review at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center. In addition, digital access to the resource will be placed on the curriculum webpage at the district website for review and comment. A final recommendation is anticipated at the August 24th, 2022 board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Edgar. Are there any questions? I guess I do have one. A new thing that I'm seeing on our agenda items is that digital access will be placed on the curriculum webpage. So this is something new?
Yes, so post-COVID or during COVID, there was many requests by the individuals actually sitting at the dais, how can we provide access to our community? So now what we do, it's just part of our general operating procedures and curriculum instruction that we ask if there's a digital component that we could allow access for our parents so they don't have to always physically come to the IRC to see the texts and the resources we're planning on using in the classroom. Greater transparency.
Thank you, and I appreciate that too, because we do know that the price of gasoline has gone up dramatically, and people having to make a round trip from the very far east portion of our district to the IRC and back will cost them a pretty penny. So, thank you.
Great point.
Thank you. And yes, go ahead,
So
Mr.
the mileage,
Worth.
Lana, the mileage rate for the state, has that been adjusted at all lately?
It has not, no.
What is it right
I
now?
think 44.5 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our ILETEL. Is that how it's pronounced?
ILIT-ELL.
ILIT-ELL, English Language Development Curriculum.
Madam President, members of the board, on November 10th, 2021, the governing board approved the curriculum and instruction team's recommendation of SAVIS My Perspectives as a 6th grade English language arts curriculum. Through communication with SAVIS, the English language development resource, ILIT-ELL, a new product which aligns to the adopted My Perspectives resource, was identified to meet the needs of our CUSD English language learner students. The total amount for the print and digital ILIT-ELL resource, including shipping, handling, and tax, is $26,763.29. In accordance with ARS 15-721 and COSD policy IJJ, for a period of 60 days starting June 9th, 2022, ILIT-ELL from SAVIS will be placed on display for public review and comment at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center. A final recommendation is anticipated at the August 24th, 2022 board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Edgar. Are there any questions? I have one. Is this basically My Perspectives just specifically, though, for our English language learners, or is it pretty much the same curriculum as we had approved prior?
It's an accompanying text to the My Perspectives, so it is catered to the different levels of our EL learners, whether that be newcomer or different pieces like that. So it's another resource for students to utilize where it does bring it to their level. So it's another way for us to differentiate.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Edgar. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we will move on to our board agenda roadmap. Our next meeting is June 22nd, and we will be having a custodial recognition during probably, I think that's usually prior to the board meeting, isn't it, Mr. Narducci? Like we do the retirement?
Right. Yeah, beforehand, and then we'll recognize them right as a presentation.
Okay, wonderful. And then we will be looking at the proposed budget for 22-23 on June 22nd.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Worth.
So can we start to fill out the roadmap for next school year for some of the items that we want to talk about?
We actually are. So right now, I have cabinet and superintendency completing the things that we have to put on the roadmap to be there, and then you guys can give Barb Mausand some ideas of what you want on there. Roadmap is different. I mean, we have planning sessions and study sessions, and each of you were returning your survey to me so that I can plan in June for July. If you haven't done that, please, you've got to do your homework to get credit for this class, right? So if you can please get that to me, because it's really valuable information. And then you can always work with Barb on those items for planning sessions and for study sessions. We already know we're putting the study session on. We know we're putting forums out there. So with the forums, they will not be on board nights, where we will, Brenda Vargas will be working with a team of people to put that together as well, and bringing in national experts that we will work with the city. So we still have to work with our time that what the city is able to also provide for us, and what venue we're going to use for that. But yes, you can put those on there, Mr. Worth.
All right. Mr. Narducci, do you have some superintendent comments for us this evening?
I always do. So, in the sake of not getting you out of here too late, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I have a few things to mention. Hamilton High School's Logan Salomon, since last time we met, was selected as the Arizona Baseball Gatorade Baseball Player of the Year. This marks the third Hamilton student athlete this school year that was selected. We had football, volleyball, and baseball. First school ever in the entire country to do so as well. This is Hamilton's fifth student athlete to win the award in the span of 4 years, and that's quite a feat for a high school to have that many Gatorade Players of the Year. Sawyer Merrill of Axier Elementary School was named Sun Lakes Rotary Sandy Lundberg Educator of the Year, and for those that don't remember Sandy, she was one of our outstanding principals and administrators who passed of cancer, and was last at Castile High School. And so Rotary was so enamored by her work in our district that they had a scholarship for teachers. This award recognizes and rewards excellence in education as reflected in the school district and the general community. Congratulations to the Basha Accelerated Middle School Academic Pentathlon team. They finished in first place at the Academic Pentathlon National Competition. I think last time we talked about them, they were actually getting ready for that. And this is making them not just back-to-back state champions, but back-to-back national champions. This was a nail-biter with AMS, beating out teams from Plano, Texas, and Fairbanks, Alaska by a fraction of a point. The U.S. Academic Pentathlon is an organization that sponsors academic competitions for middle schools in math, science, literature, social sciences, and fine arts. Overall medals are given to students whose 5 subject scores add up to the overall highest score in their GPA weight. In addition, 38 individuals' event medals were earned by 19 of the 43 AMS academic pentathletes. Chandler High School resource teacher Steve Vaught was recognized by PayPal for his commitment to excellence working with students as a teacher, mentor, and coach. Coach Vaught was nominated by a parent for this work in the science classroom as well as on the football field. Rice Elementary School was also awarded a $20,000 grant from Kroger Company Foundation to support the dedication and collaboration with Fry's operating division right here in Arizona. In the award letter, Kroger states, "We are impressed with the work that the school is doing in the community. Congratulations." Hamilton High School baseball team, under the direction of Coach Mike Woods, defeated rival Chandler High. It's a hard thing to get excited about. One of your schools beats one of your schools. I'd always rather us play somebody else so I can really cheer. But at this game, I was cheering for everybody. And Hamilton wound up coming on top and won the 6A state title at Diablo Stadium. It was the Huskies' 8th state title since 2003. Congratulations, Mike Woods. Congratulations, Chandler High, too. Being in second isn't bad in the state, and they really did well. And the camaraderie on that field would have made your spine tingle. The kids were just about kids, and they were about each other, and it was a Chandler family out there, which was so good to see. At the International Science and Engineering Fair, Perry High School senior, this is pretty cool, Joshua Shank won first place in his category of robotics and in intelligent machines. He also won a special award, the Dudley R. Hirschbach Award, that includes an all-expense paid trip to Stockholm International Youth Science Seminar and attendance to the Nobel Prize Award ceremony in Sweden. How cool is that? I think I won something like a trip to Tucson, and I lived in Tucson. I don't even think I awarded that. I think I'm making that up. But our kids are doing this great stuff. And COSD was the #1 district in Arizona to raise money for the American Heart Association. The district raised a total of $128,435 this year compared to $98,000 last year. The next closest district around us was $80,000. And it's just a tremendous aspect of our giving and our kids' giving and our parents' giving in Chandler to participate at that level, so we appreciate that. Also, the United States District Court for the District of Arizona lauded Hamilton High School social studies teacher Brianna Willits with the Excellence in Civic Education Award. Brianna puts in countless hours in her department and with her students and is a great advocate for student success at Hamilton High School. And finally, this is Mr. Frank Fletcher's last board meeting. Not sure if he's sad or joyful about that, but Frank started as our purchasing supervisor back in 1993. He worked under 3 superintendents and quickly moved through the ranks to associate superintendent. Over the years, Frank has helped us through the quickest growth period in Chandler Unified School District's history, planning and building 2 to 3 schools per year, and was on that initial team with Dr. Castile to get us through those parts. He helped navigate our district and guide us through challenging times, and his footprint will be felt in our district for a long time to come. Frank always produced, was given impossible tasks, and worked efficiently and effectively to get them done. He is knowledgeable and savvy about contracts, and always good to have him on our side of the contract, maybe not so good on the other side. And we always depended on his expertise to improve protocols and practices. One of those areas was moving our maintenance work to 3 shifts to build an efficiency into when buildings can be available and when students aren't there to interrupt educational processes. And he put that into play, and it's proved to be a very successful cost saving and efficient and increasing our efficiency of our workers. Another is his ability to work a contract and timeline so that it was deliverable and on time and under budget. I don't know of a school that we didn't deliver on time, Frank, and thank you very much. I know the first school, Conley, that I had the privilege of being the principal at, that wasn't done on time. However, we altered our calendar for that one school, which became the calendar that we're on right now, 25 years later, which through sometimes difficulty, you gain success. And sometimes through failure, we become better. And that was a great opportunity. Frank, just remember when we call, it's going to be safe to answer. Thank you for your contributions you've made to Chandler Unified School District. Enjoy your retirement with your wonderful family. You earned it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Narducci. Board member comments. Why don't we start at that end? Mrs. Bruner, anything?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay. So I get a couple of things. First, Bogle Junior High School and all the junior high schools that have dual language immersion programs that have kids coming up from elementary school. Maybe we I don't know very much about that, so we'll maybe need to learn a little bit more about that.
Sure. We've had study sessions on the elementary programs. This is the first year they've moved to the junior high. And so Dr. Edgar has been working with her team with that transition so that we can keep the languages, we have them in Spanish and Mandarin, feeding into 2 of our junior highs. And we can bring and get more information on the transition piece, definitely.
That would be helpful to just so we know, because I don't know. Second thing is I was going to mention about Frank as well. One thing that most people here don't know is I've known Frank just about as long or longer than all but like 4 of you in this room. And I was one of the people on the other side of the table at one point in time. and it was kind of funny. You see Frank come in and it's like, oh, thank you for the proposal. Now go take 10% off of it. because and that sounds kind of mean, but because he was here to do that, there's probably at least 2 or 3 more schools in Chandler than there otherwise would have been. So you got that going for you anyway. Next thing I wanted to talk about was mental health. Can we use ESSER money on mental health?
We can.
Okay. We're going to have to step back and take a look at what we can do. I'm not an expert on mental health, but we need to do something to
Mr. Olive,
help
we've already
people out.
committed the $5.5 million towards it. So
Okay.
it's already through our funding. So Lana is working her magic too to be able to work with that. Brenda Vargas is working with plans right now to move forward. So ESSER commitments are already there too, and we have to go back to the state just to go ahead and do that, but we're making that commitment.
Okay. That was all I have for today.
Mrs. Bruner.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank everyone who's reached out to share ideas to enhance our wellness initiatives. I agree that a student action board and expanded mental health first aid are important. It is also important that we get the community to be active part of of the health of our children. We have done much with limited resources in the last several years. We've incorporated evidence-based SEL into multiple levels of our curricula. The district created a department under the leadership of Brenda Vargas to provide social work services and a bunch of other. I think her role has expanded certainly over the last several years, last 4 years. Counselors have shifted from an academic career counselor role to an academic career and social emotional counselor role. Teachers have stepped up to sponsor Bring Change to Mind, so that in the last 3 years, we've had a student club available at each of our high schools to reduce stigma and inform peers. Staff have had trainings for mental health first aid. We've had workshops repeatedly for families, in person and virtually. And we've created mindfulness rooms at many of the schools. And yet, all of this has not been enough. And this is why we've decided to create a forum that will include students, parents, and community organizations and staff to create an evidence-based comprehensive plan. We can and should dedicate a significant portion of the one-time ESSER funding to this vital issue, but we also must find sustainable financial and community support. I look forward to seeing what the forum will create to continually improve in this area. And I just want to thank all of those who have been supporting our students for many years. We see you and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bruner. Ms. Love.
I get a little weepy when we talk about suicide. Last year, we ended the semester, the year, with a suicide, and this year we've ended with 3. And I think in that meeting after the one, I had spoken about never wanting to be in this position again, and we're in a worse position than we were, I feel. And I do know that our counseling department is doing their best. I've sat down with Mrs. Vargas, her team of social workers and some counselors, and they're doing their best, right? It's not enough, there's not enough of us, right? And not just in school social work, in behavioral health counseling, being the therapist who, when parents call and plead and beg for somebody to see their child, having to turn them away because I simply don't have enough slots, having to check my phone periodically throughout the meetings because I get all sorts of emergency alerts from parents or family members regarding somebody needing help. I'm glad to see that we had students here tonight and that we had parents here. I'm very glad for the parent who came and shared about their son who had recently taken their life, that he had the strength to be able to do that. This crowd this year looks a lot different than the crowd that we had last year, though, where that crowd was equating social emotional learning to liberal indoctrination and asking that we not engage in suicide assessments, which are life-saving. Those are the things that really get to me, because those things do stop progress. And I think that we were making a lot of progress, of course, before the pandemic, but we had a lot of people who jumped in and decided that they were going to make this into a political issue instead of about our students, their families, and their lives. And so I hope that those people who came into the meeting last year heard those students and heard the families who were asking for better. And I think the other thing too is speaking about suicide and mental health, and I believe that we also spoke about our LGBTQ students as well. I just think that it is interesting that there is more done, to silence me, but that same energy was not given when we had people who came in and made homophobic and transphobic comments, when we had people who made racist comments, some of them sitting on this dais. And that is just the perfect example of how we as the board need to do better, because our students are here and they are calling us out and saying that they need help. They're experiencing microaggressions, racial slurs, transphobia, homophobia, all of the isms, and we sit and turn a blind eye to it. And I hope that we can do better for those students, because the way that I've been treated tonight is a perfect example of what happens when our families come here and they ask for help and we do nothing, or we silence them, or we're too afraid to get in the fight because we're afraid of parents who show up on the other side and try to turn this into a political issue when it's just parents simply showing up and students simply showing up and fighting for their lives. I'm a mental health professional and I fight for lives every single day. I'm in this fight. And so I may be passionate about this, but that's because I have been that therapist who has lost a client. I have been that therapist who has supervised other therapists who have lost a client, who have had to sit with parents while children were pulled off of life support. And so I hope that we can do better by our students, and that we as a board can get into that fight, and we can recognize that we are not as dedicated to equity as we claim, and we are not as dedicated to mental health as we claim. And that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Worth, do you have any public comments?
I guess I don't mind the comments. I don't appreciate the bullying that seems to come from your mouth all the time.
And that's a perfect example right there.
Yep, you're just a bully.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that, and Barb, I'm waiting for you to bang that gavel on that.
Yeah. No wonder you're so popular.
I would like to end on a positive note. Mr. Fletcher, we're going to miss you. My first encounter with you was when I was an Art Masterpiece volunteer and you'll recognize it. But when we were getting some new equipment for Art Masterpiece at one of the elementary schools, and I won't go into details, but you got the situation resolved, and I appreciate that. And that was as a parent, where I came into him for help because we were having some problems with getting things done. And I think that even back then, you really knew the ropes and how to get things done. And when I listened to Jason, and, you know, hey, take 10% off of that on the bid. And I truly appreciate all of the work that you have done and really kept our facilities, not only for our new builds, but also our existing facilities, in great shape, and have allowed them to meet the expectations of, I think, the standards that our community has for the buildings that we have for our students. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Madam President, members of the board, it's been an honor and privilege to serve this governing board and all the previous governing boards and this community. The trust that this board and previous boards placed in my team and I is unparalleled across the state and allowed us to do the things that we were able to do. So on behalf of myself, my team, and my family, I just want to say thank you. It's been a great ride, and I wish you all nothing but the best as you navigate the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I also would like to comment on some of the students with being able to get, I mean, we are teaching, or we are providing professional development for our teachers and staff in the mental health first aid, I believe is what is that the specific name of it? And I do believe that we should find some way that either through a partner agency or something that we might be able to, that we could provide that to some of the students. And I hope that we can look into that, because I do believe that it would help give them the tools to help them be able to see things in other students that they might be able to report. And I hope it has a student-centered training that is available out there. And so maybe we can end up talking to some of the other agencies to see if something like that can be developed or I mean, put in place, or if it's not around, if we could develop something like that so that our students really do know what to do and to help other students. And because I think I seem to get that theme that students kind of didn't know what to do, where to find, and parents don't know where to find resources, and thus students don't know where to find resources either. And I think we do need to find a better way to communicate all of that out to the community. I also believe that us being able to partner with other agencies and perhaps even the city is going to be extremely beneficial, like Mrs. Bruner was talking about. So hopefully we can get that in place. So. Are there any other things? All right. We will see you then on June 22nd. Thank you for coming this evening. This meeting is adjourned.